if there is collusion going
Morning,
on
everyone.
currently, that is something that's a different question for the Competition Bureau, rather than just trying to get a handle on our prices overall rising
Thursday
more quickly
today.
than
Everything
inflation.
looks
and
normal.
Is that the fault only of the retailer? And I think it's more complex than that.
So if the CEO say it's not our fault, and yet Canadians are still being squeezed, finding it difficult to afford basic
pretty mild
items
weather
because
today.
of the cost of food.
Well, not mild,
what
but I
needs
mean,
to happen now
it's not
to
storming.
make this system more sustainable?
Still a little cool out.
I think what we need to do is take a broader look at the entire food distribution system, all the way from the farm gate to the table. And again, if it's just going to be a witch hunt, who's to blame for this? I don't know if that's going to be very productive. I think we
Food
need to
prices
look at the whole
still
system. I think we need to understand why
skyrocketing,
is it
not going
that
down.
while Canada's economy is actually doing really well, 5% unemployment, the Bank of Canada raising rates to cool the economy down, we have record food bank usage in Canada. To me, that speaks of a system that is not working. Food distribution, right, again, from the farm gate to the table. I think we need to maybe come up with a strategy, and this is maybe where there's a role for governments, agriculture departments at the provincial and federal level, an overall strategy for food security in Canada, something that looks at, are we too dependent on imported food? Do we have adequate supply of food in case there are, or in the event of further climate events that are going to disrupt agricultural production? I think that's where we need to be, rather than just trying to pin this all on the blame on the retailers.
Do we know if we were to invest more in food production in this country? We import a lot of food for a number of different reasons, including cost. But if we were to import more, or if we were to invest in food production here, would that actually make food any cheaper? Do we know that?
I don't think it would make it any cheaper, but it might change our relationship with food a little bit. And I guess if there is any positive coming out of this food price inflation, and there's not a lot, because I know a lot of households are really struggling, but I think we need to change our relationship with food. And if we grow more and produce more food here in Canada, that might be part of the solution. I think our relationship with food, we haven't really respected food in a lot of ways. We throw out so much food. Different guests on CBC, I've listened to one guest talk about food wastage and how much food is wasted all the way from the farm gate to the table. I think we need to change our relationship with food and understand that we shouldn't be, or we can't be, wasting so much food. Food is precious, and we need to figure out ways to use food more effectively, maybe shop more effectively, but also throw out less food. I think all of those things, and grow more food here in Canada. And that doesn't mean it's going to come down in cost, because a lot of that, in Canada, we need to grow a lot of food in greenhouses if we're going to have fresh produce. So it's not that food is going to come down in price and return to being really cheap, but I think our relationship with food needs to change.
What about throwing out the issue of supply management? People take a look at food and they see the high cost of butter in particular, but it's milk and cheese as well. The butter is the kind of the pinch point that people are feeling right now, about $7, $8, $9 for a block of butter. And that's in some areas. It could be more in other areas. If the government, and again, this is political kryptonite for many politicians, they don't want to get involved in this, but do you need to address something like that? The supply management of the dairy industry in this country, would that address the cost of food?
Well, I definitely think it needs to be part of the broader conversation and addressing the bigger question of the whole food distribution system. But you look at a lot of other items that aren't supply managed, like beef. It's not that beef is cheap. So again, I think supply management, we need to ask tough questions around it, but I don't think we can pin all of the blame on supply management either.
In the piece in the Globe and Mail that you wrote yesterday, you said in some ways food prices are going to continue to rise, only a little bit slower. So if we were to talk again in 6 months, will there be any relief for people at the grocery store?
I don't think so. We might see food price inflation come back down to 2 or 3% if we're lucky. But, consumers have to remember, that doesn't mean food prices go back to where they were. We're not going to see deflation. It just means that food prices are going to continue to rise, but at a slower, more manageable pace. So I think we need to accept and maybe, prepare ourselves for permanently higher food prices. And now it's a question of how do consumers prepare for that and how do they manage those higher food prices on an ongoing basis.
Are you confident that anything meaningful will come out of those hearings yesterday? They continue, but the ones that happened yesterday in particular.
162.6
I mean, I always
for
want
the
to
gas.
remain optimistic and hopeful that, some greater understanding will come out. But, watching it yesterday, it really did feel like they're not getting anywhere on these questions. The retailers were very defensive in their explanation. I didn't get a feeling that the MPs that were grilling the retailers were very satisfied. So I don't know if we're going to see a lot of constructive outcomes, but I guess we have to hope for the best.
Todd, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Todd Hirsch, Calgary-based economist. You're welcome to comment on this if you are on the supplier's side of things, but also if you're on the consumer angle. When you take a look at the high cost of food, what's behind it, but also what do you think we should do about it? Email us, thecurrent@cbc.ca.
Big deal with the food prices. Nobody's given a straight answer why it's so expensive. The big food companies are saying, "Oh, it's not us. We're not making any profits." But they can't show you where the food price is coming from. So, oh well. What are you gonna do, right? That's why it's more important that all your stuff is in order, because then more bills that you're paying out, the harder it's going to seem, because you're always left with no money at the end of your paycheck. You don't have as many bills, so you have a little bit more money to play around with. It just makes it a little easier. I don't know. A lot of people have to change, I guess. Times are tough, especially for people that are just starting out, because your bills appear to be so much higher versus somebody who's coming to an end with their bills. Like mortgages and stuff like that. Everybody made it seem like, oh, hey, the interest rate is so low, blah, blah, blah. Now's the time to borrow money. I think that's what a lot of people did. Now then they start raising the interest rates, and then you're paying almost twice as much, if not maybe more. So yeah, what you thought was stable, manageable debt ends up being out of control debt. Just in a matter of months, because the bank decides to change their interest rates, which is pretty scammy. Because now you got all these people that are stuck with the prices going up, and they either have to keep paying it and try and make it work, or get out and sell what they were trying to get. But yeah, it's really hard.
The the batter's not in the batter's box.
Right. Yeah.
Why now? I mean, baseball has been like this since time. So is there something in particular that would lead baseball? Like, was it Major League Baseball feeling some sort of pressure now to run these clocks?
Absolutely. The pressure is the dropping attendance. Attendance is lower than it had been pre-pandemic levels.
Everything's falling apart, guys. People don't know what they're doing in their jobs, or I don't know. Something's turned into a runaway train. It's hard to get it back. But, be careful and try and do good by you, I guess. Make sure you're alright. Talk to you guys later. See how things go.